So I shouldn't have been asking a question with a question. But yeah, that's my view on it, and would be glad to hear anyone else's view.
Yeah, this is a very touchy subject, and I know the wounds hit hard for so many people because, Joseph's story is not, something that's, oh, it's an anomaly. It doesn't really happen. Joseph's story hits home for many of us, if not all of us, in some form or fashion. And like I said, if we're honest enough to say, hey, I don't know if I would have done a Joseph on all of that. But it was interesting, and following up with what Tanya said, that he pretended to be a stranger, like he didn't reveal himself to them right away. And I know that took a lot of humility. Because let me tell you the following. If you did wrong to me, and I'm in a good place where I got my BMW and I'm on the staff of the highest order in the country, and you're coming up to me, I'm gonna be like, look, you remember me? You don't remember me? I'll tell you just how it is. But Joseph had this level of humility where he was like, no, it's not the time and it's not the way. I need to do a little bit more. And there's a quote, a favorite quote of mine that I'll share with you guys. And it really tries to temper me in moments like this Joseph moment. And it's a quote that I don't know the author of, but I keep it in my heart and I keep it near and dear to me. I'm going to share it with you. And the quote is, there are two things that define us in life: our patience when we have nothing, and our attitude when we have everything. Now that you unpack that how you want to, but when you have nothing, you're anxious about everything. Like, when am I going to get to the next level? How am I going to get here? And you're ripping and running to try to get these things that will fulfill you. And when you have everything, what does that mean? Are you going to look back now and say, oh, the people that helped me, I'm going to help them, and the people that didn't help me, I'm going to mess on them? Those two things refine you, because everybody has a moment where they feel like they have nothing and a moment where they feel like they have everything. And now Joseph is full circle with everything anybody could dream of: a dream job, a dream place to stay. He has the power, everything. But he's still exercising the patience that he found when he was in the pit, in the pasture, and in the prison. He's still exercising that same patience, even though he has everything. And now he has an attitude of service, even to those who had harmed him. So I just want to know if anybody wants to share or unpack anything different for, what we're sharing now about.
Good morning. Hi. Good morning, Lisa and Tanya, and your listening audience. It's Wendy.
Morning.
I'm really enjoying the lesson so far. With respect to the question that was asked, I think it's difficult to really, I guess, give your view on what you may or may not have done. But I can say that if you are a Christian, and like Joseph, having experienced the love and grace of God by taking him out of the pit and taking him to the highest level, the highest order, I think it would have been difficult not to extend the same grace and love and mercy to others, like his brothers who would have wronged him. And so the human side of him, I think, like all of us, just wants to know, just want answers to questions, like, why did you do it? But I think at the end of the day, that same grace and love that was extended, if we are indeed Christians, we would end up extending that same love and grace to others.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for that insight, Wendy, and good to see you and good to hear you. Anyone else wanted to weigh in on that?
Good morning. Good morning, Sabbath School. I'd like to do an opposite end of that, in that I think it comes out in this week's lesson that, was either this week or last week that I read about, where we must remember the story of persons, especially the rich ruler, who the king had asked him to pay me what you owe me. And he begged and pleaded, and the king said, fine, no problem. So that same mercy that was extended to him, he now did not feel the obligation to return that. And that is as a result of our sinful, selfish heart. What grace and mercy has been given to us, I venture to say, and this is my humble opinion, 8 times out of 10, we do not extend that grace and mercy because we as a people forget from whence we come from. Some of us forget we used to live on Wolf Road or East Street or in the Black Grove or whatever else. And when we would have arrived, so to speak, we look down on our brothers and sisters who have not yet made it. And so with the wealth that the Lord has blessed us with, we tend to be like, well, I learned and I got it for myself, so why should I do you? Or if you lent money to a brother or a sister in church, you may not know their full condition, and some of them are too ashamed or too embarrassed to come and say, I can't pay it. But you have the means. You don't need that $50 or $100 or $500 or $1,000. But yet still, by the time you finish with their reputation in church, only Jesus could save them. So I'm saying to us, this is my take on it. And I tend to see this part more than I see the other part. Like I say, in my mind, 8 times out of 10. So we ought to learn from that story, because I don't believe nothing is in the Bible without a reason and a cause. The story of Job is a personal one for me, and the story of other things you can find personal applications in your life, because people will be people no matter what. When you find a soul like Joseph, you know that's a soul that the Lord is striving with, because I haven't reached that Joseph mountaintop yet. So I'm simply saying, we as human beings that are selfish in nature, and we always look out for all for me, baby, we forget from whence we came, and we forget the goodness of God when we need it. And like I say, 8 times out of 10, we do not return the favor. And that's why I think further down in the lesson, it gives an indication that, God says, depart from me. I don't know you. Why? Because you did not do the things that I expected you to do. Remember, the Lord himself said, the poor we will always have with us. So you can't shun them away. But when you are able to, your riches say going with you when you go in the grave. So hoarding up ain't gonna make nothing else. And if you could relieve somebody's suffering, if only for a short period of time, that's where that mercy and that grace, in my humble opinion, comes into play.
Wow. Thank you, Sister Vicky. You hit the nail on the head where I was going next. And talking about mercy, one of my favorite texts of scripture is Micah 6, verse 8. The Lord gave that to me in a moment when I needed to show some mercy. And basically it's saying that all that's required of us is to do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly. In my opinion, you can't be justified in anything if you don't have mercy. Mercy is the salve and the emblem that brings it down 1,000 and say, wait a minute, we're all bags of dust together. We all sin and come short of that glory. And if you don't have the mercy, and if you don't receive the mercy that God has given you, you can't extend it to someone else. And you will not be just in your actions and reactions to people if you don't exercise mercy. And exercising mercy allows us to walk humbly. And that means that we don't elevate ourselves above the other. So you bringing it home in a really marked way. And I also thank Wendy for her insight into this, because no matter how you look at this whole Joseph story, the impacts are so great and the lessons are so beautiful. If you can see yourself in this picture and say, hey, I need to have an attitude of gratitude, because for me, it starts with your attitude. And if you're not able to be happy and to be grateful for whatever travail or whatever posture ring happens in your life, and you can't take it back to the original source. Talking about Monday's lessons now, we're going to enter into that where it talks about setting the stage. How was the stage of Joseph's life set for him? Was it set in a pasture where he was going to have a happily ever after? Or was it actually set in the trouble that he faced, that he thought was the worst thing that could ever happen to a human being? That set the stage for something better. And I think, like Sister Vicky talked about with Job, when we look at our life in just a minuscule little segment or snippet, and we don't see the full picture, like Job, we looked at Job's story and we saw the full picture right away. You know, we saw where the devil came to God and said, hey, I want to get that one over there. And he was like, I don't know, but you could do this much or not so much. If we could see how our trials and tribulations and everything are refining us and setting the stage for our earthly rest, when we can come together with God in the ceaseless ages of eternity, I think we would embrace them a little better and a little, you know, with less anxiety and less angst, if you want to look at it from that perspective. So setting the stage now, I'm asking every one of us, and some of us may want to share their testimony and others may be a little shy and say, look at things in your life that set the stage for you now in your present. It may have been a good thing, or it may have been something that hurt you a little bit if you feel inclined that you want to share it. And then I will share something of mine to end out the segment. But if you can think of something that can help someone today, looking at your life now and saying, hey, this thing happened to me in my past, with my family or with friends or in a situation, and God was setting the stage for something better, something great, something grand. And if you want to share that story, go ahead and share with us.
Good morning, ladies. And it seems to be predominantly a ladies' day today. But when we talk about difficulties and challenges and things that come in our lives, it's hard to look at them in a positive light if you look at them from a selfish perspective. The thing I learned about the story of Joseph was connected to Christ. He had a relationship and a connection to him it's hardly mentioned, but you have to look between the lines to see it. And you see it strongly when it comes to Potiphar's wife. He said, how can I do this thing and sin against my God? He didn't say anything about Potiphar. He didn't say about her. He didn't say about himself. He was talking about God. And through his trials and tribulations and all the things that happened, it didn't ever say in the Bible where Joseph started saying, oh, poor me. Look, how could this thing happen to me? I mean, Job did that, but Joseph didn't do that. So Joseph had a very strong connection with Christ. And this is what caused him to have the perspective and the outlook that he did when his brothers finally showed up. He wasn't about condemning them. The only test he put on them was to see where they were at. And when he saw where they were at, it broke his heart to see that they were changed men. And that they had real brotherly love this time, even for Benjamin, who was still the favorite son. Joseph had gone, and now Benjamin was still the favorite son. So they were still in the same predicament where they were not their father's favorite children. But despite that, these men had matured spiritually, and they got to a place now where they were changed men. And when Joseph saw that, he saw it from a godly perspective. And so the point I want to make here is how we react to things depends on our connection with God. If your connection is weak and flawed, then you're going to react more from a selfish perspective. The stronger your connection, the closer you are to Christ, the more your reaction will be Christ-like. And when we look at Christ on the cross being crucified, and who's saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, talking about people spitting on him, nailing him to a tree, ripping him, scourging him, and he's saying, forgive them. And this is the attitude that God wants us to have. So Joseph shows us, in spite of everything that happens, God is in control. We ought to relax and understand that and find the rest in that. And then it will evidence itself in how we react to people who have wronged us. It doesn't matter if they're repentant or not. They've wronged us, and the obligation is on us to forgive them so that we can move on. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Brother Clayton. Thank you. And you also brought up a point I'm going to make as we close out this section for Monday. I think Joseph set the stage with his brothers when he was able to give them a chance to kind of relive the past, okay? And he wasn't just going to accuse them and just judge them and unmercilessly, have that restitution that he needed. He wanted to set up a way where he could see, like, I want to put myself in my brother's shoes, all of them. And let me set up a situation where I can actually see, in his wisdom, he could see how they would react if given a second chance at doing this thing, second chances. And so I'll just quickly share a short little synopsis of a testimony I had, and that's why this whole topic of forgiveness really registered with me. My dad, just to give a quip, he was, into politics and a lot of stuff in the Bahamas, and he had a real harsh demise in his early 40s. His whole career turned against him, and he stood for some principles that it backfired on him. And he became bitter and angry and anguished. And then our home became a bitter, angry home. He took a lot of it out on us, became an alcoholic and everything else. Nobody knew the ins and outs, but we had to face it every day. And it was hard. And I remember I grew more animosity and bitterness towards my father. And I was like, I hate him and I can't wait to get away from him. And I can't wait until I'm done with him and he's going to hell to rot forever. And I remember coming over to Michigan and having some issues in my marriage and going to a counseling session. And it was all brought back to this moment with my father. And my friend, Pastor Rob, he was also a friend of mine who was counseling me. He was like, Lisa, you have to meet, your dad is like 70 something years old now, right? And you're still treating him with this whip that he's also been whipping himself with when he was 7 years old. At 7 years old, he lost his mom. Trust was broken in his home. A lot of things happened, and everything that piled on him, the epicenter of that volcano happened in his 40s, and we got the spillage from that. So he said, why don't you try to go back to that 7-year-old kid that's hurting right now and find that 7-year-old kid and connect with that kid? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. That's psychobabble. But I took his words seriously. I prayed about it. And I said, okay, I wrote a letter to my father. And the first letter was like, I was telling him, I was cursing him, I was being disrespectful. You did this and this and this and this and this. And I talked to Pastor Rob and he's like, you got it out your system, right? I was like, yeah. He's like, what are you going to do with it? I was like, feels good. So he said, I want you to rip that up and burn it. Burn it? You're not sending that. Okay. Because people who are hurting, they already know the bad things that they've done. That's all they see about themselves. And that's why they keep bleeding and wounding others. So I said, no, that's not going to help the situation. That's going to ignite more pain. So we burnt it up and I was like, okay, that's cathartic. Now I had to change my attitude. Like, what am I going to do next? Because I still have a lot to deal with. And the next letter I wrote to my father, I wrote it from a perspective of understanding that little 7-year-old boy who grew up to be hurt and hurt and hurt even more. And I put it in the context of, Dad, this is what you taught me. This is the good things I learned from you. And it was like maybe a 4-page letter. I sent it off to him. I was coming home that summer. And I said, oh, we're going to connect. But my dad never responded. So when I called my mom, I said, did Daddy get a letter from me? He goes to the post office ritually every week. And she's like, he didn't say anything to me. As soon as I got home, he said, and this is my dad who had not left East Street South for 20 years. He was stuck in that little shop. He wouldn't go even to Paradise Island. He said, we're going to Clarencetown, Long Island, my home. Me and you on a trip. And I said, what? My dad's taking me on a trip? What? And he said nothing on the plane ride. He couldn't say anything to me until we hit onto Long Island. And he got into that little town and he broke down. And he said, I want you to know me from the beginning. Now, I'm trying to do this without tears, but we walked every inch of Clarencetown. And he told me about all his pains and hurts and travails, and he wept, he sobbed. And he said, Lisa, I was such a bad father to you guys. I didn't know it. You saw me in that good way. You saw me as something better than I even see myself. And that was the pathway for healing. I had to connect with that kid that was hurting inside my father's body. And I'm happy to tell you that was a passageway for me going forward, not only to live a better life with him, but to live a better life with my children, to break those curses and those chains that were happening. We have so many family chains and generational curses that we need to break. And it starts with just that empathy, that attitude of gratitude, where I could show my father, here are the things I'm thankful that your life brought into mine. And here are the things I want to take from your life into the next generation. Let's look at the good. Let's look at what can elevate and heal us and not continue to hurt and hound us. So I apologize for the little bit of tears, but I just had to share that. Love you guys and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate everything that you said. And now I'm going to turn it over to Vicky, who will present Tuesday and Wednesday.
I think I did my wrong days, Tanya, but anyhow, it's a good thing you do the whole week's lesson. Tuesday, forgive and forget. Can I say this is a big issue? Can I say that loud and clear?
Sure.
Okay, I didn't clear my conscience now. So the definition that it gives, it says, what I underline, it says the whole idea of forgiveness is an intentional act by the victim. It's not something that just happens. And I'm grateful for those words. I think of so many things that happen to us as individuals. And so many stories you hear, even within the body of Christ. This one do that to me, that one do the next to me. And it goes down a family heritage. That's where it goes. And so when you read stories like this about Joseph, I guess you got to take a pen out the young people's page. You got to sit small. You really have to sit small after that. And so the paragraph also states that forgiveness doesn't mean that there will be no consequences. It doesn't mean that you continue to let the abuser abuse and all the other stuff. It means instead that we must turn our resentment and our desire for revenge over to God. That is a powerful statement in and of itself, and it's no easy task. It says, if not, the anger, the bitterness, the resentment, the hatred will make whatever that person or persons did to you even worse. So, I guess the question we need to ask ourselves is in Matthew. And I think we need to go and read that. What does forgiving others do for us? I always say, before I even get into that, well, why I need forgiveness? But the question is asked. So let's see what Matthew 18 does, if we can all go there. Hopefully we're students of the word and we have our Bible somewhere around us. Matthew 18, 21 to 35, it's a whole long thing. Basically, the gist of it is, Peter's like, Lord, I'm tired of these people messing with me. How much times I got to be forgiving these people for this dumbness they keep doing to me? All I hear you when you say that, Lord, you need to give me a way of escape. And he said, 70 times 7. And there's literally some people would just be trying to count that. Oh, more power to them. I don't have the energy nor the time, right? And then he gives that same story about the king. I remember now, that's where it is. About the son, the person who was forgiven with a lot of money, and the other one who had, 100 times less than what he has. They're the point again too. So what does it do to us? I need some comments before I say what I have to say. What does forgiving somebody, and when I say forgiveness, I'm thinking of the worst thing that someone has done to you. The worst. Throw in there for getting this worst scenario. And then, I like to bring it back home to be practical. I'm sorry, my entire religion here for me. I'm a poor, humble church mouse. I keep it real. So let's think of certain scenarios. Number one, we will all go to church and somebody in the church steals our spouse. Number one. Number two, we're dating to get married. Someone in the church intervenes and goes around that and take the other person away from you. And this is a person you trust with all of your thoughts and your beliefs. Prayer partner, if you please. Number three, you go to the pastor and speak to him about a very personal matter. And he unfortunately spoke to his wife about it, and his wife got friends. Hello, somebody, can I hear a witness in the place? Number four, your best friend, things that you grow up with and talking to about life's journeys, your problems, your intimate moments, your secrets, your secret love affairs, your whatever else. And you all get into a big argument. And then, of course, your life story becomes the word life story. The punching have nothing on them after that. I've given you some scenarios that are real life consequences. Open up to the floor. What does forgiving do? Why do I have to forgive this person? Like he said, what in it for me? That's the question to Sabbath school. What in it for me to forgive those people? And I give you nothing easy by intention, because it's easy for somebody to say, "Oh, sorry, I stepped on your foot." That's a small thing. Or even not paying me back my money when I lend you. That's a small thing. I'm giving you real life situations where you have to get up, go to church that Sabbath, go down to your family friend, see them every day, go to the wedding of the person. I'm talking in your face forgiveness. Sabbath school, how do we relate to that? What's in it for you?
First of all, let me just say that forgiveness is for the person that wronged you, but it's a lot more for you who forgive that person. And also, you're forgiving the person. Does it mean that the person comes and asks for forgiveness or is sorry? You could forgive somebody who is not even repentant. But the thing is, if you don't forgive, you become bitter. And I think Lisa touched on it. Not forgiving affects you badly. It breaks up a relationship with that person, and it causes you to become bitter. And there's a saying that people have out there that I think is interesting. I think it has some value. Hurt people hurt people. I don't know if you've ever heard that. But when you're hurting because of an issue or somebody's wronged you, you're going to end up hurting somebody else. And usually it's someone you love. And this is where the problem comes in. You have to learn to forgive, because forgiveness helps you to reconcile or to find that place of rest where you can retain who you are and not hurt other people and become a predator yourself. So that's my take on that.
Clayton, I just have a question with regards to forgiveness and reconciliation. Do you believe that they're synonymous or they're separate?
They are separate.
Okay.
They're not the same. Just because you forgave someone doesn't mean you're going to be reconciled. But you cannot reconcile without forgiveness. You're not going to reconcile with this person if you never forgave them. And reconciliation means that you're restored back to where you were before.
Right.
And Christ wants to reconcile with us. And this is one of the reasons why it says, while we were yet in our sins, he sought us. We don't have to be repentant. God wants to forgive us because he wants to reconcile himself to us. And it's an example that he gave to us so that we can understand how important forgiveness is to ourselves. And the story of Joseph, like somebody said, it's not just put there arbitrarily. There are very, very valuable things we learn about these things that God is trying to teach us from these stories. Job teaches us why bad things happen to good people. And Joseph teaches us that we ought to forgive because forgiveness helps us. and it helps the other person and brings everybody back to a place of rest. Even if the person who is the purveyor of evil is not repentant, at least you're back to a place of rest. I hope that helps.
Yes, thanks.
Hello.
Your hand up.
Hello. Hi,
Go ahead, Bev.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good morning, Sabbath School.
Good morning.
I'm here in Bermuda on vacation, but I said I have to join my friends, my sister friends, Tanya, Lisa, I know would be on. So I had to share when the topic of forgiveness, forget, and then Tanya, you just asked Clayton to clarify reconciliation. And so for me, this is personal, Sister Vicky. I like the examples that you gave, and there are some tough ones.
Yeah, real
But I
life.
have had quite a few oops, hello?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Am I not being heard?
Yes, you are. You're good.
Okay. Okay, good. So yeah, they're real life and they're tough. And I've had some real life tough situations like all of us had. And I had to work through this forgiveness, forget, reconciliation. And I remember a particular, when I returned to the Bahamas, it was a Sabbath school discussion at one of our first churches assignment. And this same topic came up. And somebody said, well, I can forgive you, but I don't know if I can forget, and I could love you from a distance. And I remember chiming in and saying, I kind of agreed with that person. And boy, they looked at me like I was a sinner straight from the pits of hell. And I'm like, look, I'm human. But what I had to work through was the reconciliation part that Tanya and Clayton just spoke to. Because how does that look? And for me, I remember saying, look, when we forgive, what it means for me is that I love you. I don't have no ill will towards you. I want to see you in the kingdom. I love you with everything. I will do whatever God asked me to do. But that reconciliation thing, like I restore you back to the place that we had, that takes time. It takes a lot of God working through.
Yes.
And I remember saying, I could love you, but I don't necessarily have to like you.
Yes.
I was commanded to love you, where I don't want evil and I want you in the kingdom next to me. I don't have a problem with that. But liking you means that I am welcoming you in that same space where you would have me, or and I silent and restoring to that place. That's where I had, and I am so happy that Tanya, you asked the question, is it one and the same? And it's not. So that is just all that I had to say. I know it's tough. I can go on and on, but Sister Vicky, I thank you for bringing up those things because they're tough to come in church and smile and really love and forgive someone who's done that to you. I'm done. And God bless and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Sister Beverly. Tanya, need to steal a paragraph from Thursday because, like I tell you, I did the wrong day. I did Wednesday and Thursday, and I mark up all Wednesday and Thursday. In line of what Sister Bev was saying, it says, while it may not always be possible or wise to restore relationships, this does not mean that we cannot forgive. We may not be able to hug and weep with our offender. Hallelujah. Praise the name of the living God. But we may want to voice our forgiveness either vocally or through a letter. And then it is time to let go of pain to the utmost degree that we can. Perhaps some pain will always remain, but at least we can be on the path to healing. And I think that is ever, ever so important, forgiving and forgetting. And on the Tuesday again, it says, we have all sinned, not just against other people, but against God's will. We forgive not because others deserve it, but because it's what we have received from God and we need ourselves. And it says, how often do we ourselves deserve forgiveness? So we look at Joseph again. It said that he gave his family a second chance for relationships. No grudges, no falling back to things that happened in the past, that kind of thing. Help us, Holy Ghost, I say to that. Help us, Holy Ghost. It is almost impossible to begin again in a family where we have each become experts at learning how best to hurt each other. But that's not how Joseph reacts. It seems that he wants to put the past behind them and to move ahead and with love and acceptance. Now, had Joseph had a different attitude, I'm sure the story would have had a different ending, one not so happy. So one of the things I take away from that is, despite the fact now that Joseph had a different heart, mind you, his heart was the same always, but people hurt. And when they hurt, they react. Some retaliate, some do whatever. But I gather from this as well that the brothers also had a slight change of heart. They learned from their mistakes and their mess that they did and they caused to create this continuously dysfunctional family. I mean, not that dad didn't have anything to do with it, but nonetheless, still, you know, it is what it is. So let's do Wednesday, making it practical. It says, what does Jesus' declaration on the cross tell us something about the timing of forgiveness? That's another one, Holy Ghost. The timing. Let's see what Luke 23:34 has to offer. Luke 23:34. And it says, then said Jesus, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they parted his raiment and cast lots. Question to the class, what does that mean? What does that mean? The timing of this declaration. So this means you mess up my family life, you mess up my relation, you mess up my reputation, you do whatever you could do to me. You're trying to tell me, is it telling me this? I don't know. I mean, it's open to the class. Right away, I say, like Christ on the cross, as you are stabbing me in the back and twisting the knife, or stabbing me in the chest and twisting the knife to go from each lung. Hey, these days people ain't doing it in the back no more, they doing it in the front. So, like I say, let's keep it real. Do I say, as they do that, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do? Not pie in the sky now, what do you do? Question to the class. What does this declaration tell us about the timing of forgiveness? Do I forgive you the same time you're doing it? The next day, the next week, the next year? Do we have the time? Or don't we have the time? Nobody one dare take that, hey? It's a challenging question. Lisa, you want to comment?
I'm just going to comment and say that the heart knows when the timing is right, because I could say I forgive you, you know, as parents, you would force your kids to say to someone, I'm sorry, and they're not ready to say sorry.
No.
So what does that really do for the situation?
Mm-hmm.
But if you can speak to that child and say, hey, I want you to look at this situation, and it may take them a minute or two to really see your point of view and then come back and say, you know what, I'm really sorry. So do I want a quick sorry but it's not thought of and my heart isn't in it? Or do I want a sorry that has meaning, and it may take time to do that? You know, that's the thing.
Yeah, I always wonder, you know, about these phrases that we use when we do something wrong. You know, I don't know, be it the demon in me or the evil in me. You come tell me you sorry. I'm like, oh, you sorry, or you sorry you got caught? That's what I be thinking. I know, but y'all, I could, hey, confession good for the soul. That's what I'm thinking. Like, you sorry, or you sorry you got caught, or what's the story? So my thing is, I think Christ is trying to tell us, as soon as possible, you need to get that thing in there. Because if you allow it to fester, honey child, it ain't gonna be better next day, next week, next year. As a matter of fact, that'll be like beef outside on top of the grill. It's gonna take a while. It's gonna take a while. The paragraph underneath that, it says, Jesus didn't wait for us to ask for forgiveness. We do not have to wait for our offender to ask for forgiveness. Some of us will be waiting with the stick still in our head into the grave. We can forgive others without having them accept our forgiveness. Now, that's a challenging question for me. Why? I mean, is that something of importance that we need to be concerned with? If I say, let me pick on my friend Tanya. If I say, Tanya, all right, I forgive you for what you said about me yesterday. You didn't know that I hear what you had to say, but I forgive you. Tanya will be like, whether you forgive me or not, it don't make no never mind to me. I said what I said, and that's it. That's one of those knives in the front of your chest for going for the too longs from side to side. So it's saying, you go ahead and clear yourself of whatever needs to be done. At some point in time, Tanya might find herself in that point. But if you wait on Tanya, that might not happen. So you got to do what you need to do for you. Okay, the other two. What does Luke 6:28 and Matthew 5:44 teach about how we relate to those who hurt us? That was a challenging one too. I think I made some notes here. Matthew 5:44 said, love your enemies, bless them that curse you despitefully, using blah, blah, blah. And I think Luke 6:28, bless them that curse you and pray. So now I'm going to be again my little wicked and evil self. Whilst, let me pick on Lisa this time. Whilst Lisa, let me see how practical I can make this now. Whilst Lisa is out there trying to plot on my spouse, right? Lisa and I belong to women's ministry together. Lisa and I are told to grab a partner and we become prayer partners. Lisa and I are told whenever we are, and God, let's just add 5 to the few, we work together too. I'm keeping it real, people. This stuff happens. This ain't some of the stuff I ain't create this. Some of the stuff has been real. And I gotta pray with Lisa. Whilst I know full well what Lisa trying to do. Whilst I know full well what has been going to happen. So my Bible tells me, when I'm in my closet praying, instead of saying the prayer, oh Lord, if you could just take that Lisa and wring her neck the best way you could, and then take a carcass and throw it somewhere over Paradise Island Bridge, I must be saying, Lord, please bless Lisa and her family. Give her the strength to overcome all of her bad convictions. And Lord, please help me not to run Lisa over with my car when I see her walking in the mall. And please help me not to put my foot out from the pew when I see her walking in church. So does that mean that Sabbath school? What are your comments? Hey now, this keeping it real, people. You can't be quiet on stuff like this. This stuff happens.
Oh, wow. That's an analogy for the books for sure. And I have had to deal with that in my own personal view with a boss I had, and my girlfriends would know about this. And I felt he was the devil in hell. And while he was plotting, literally plotting for me, I had to exercise some kind of wisdom, and I didn't know what it was. And a lot of times when you're going through that, you don't know, there's not a cliche answer. And what may seem wise to you may seem as foolishness to another person. Because some of my friends were like, report him and do this and do that. And I said, no, I'm gonna do it this way. And I don't think there's a cliche answer for those things. It depends on the relationship level you have with that person. It depends on, if you're in a work environment or a family environment, it just depends. But we have to get used to taking it to God and saying, look, just like you said, I don't know what I want to do or how I should handle this. I need you to direct me. And I feel like I got direction in how to deal with this thing. And the outcome from that situation is that same boss who was doing all that stuff and all that craziness to me in my pit and prison moment with him. Turns out, after I left that job and I got another assignment, I was in a position where I could go back on him. This is a Joseph moment. And again, I tried not to. And my point is, we don't know what the end result will be. And that's why we get anxious in these moments. You don't know what the setup is. God is using this for a purpose. And if we can get back to seeing the godly hand in this and saying, God, you allow and you hinder. Why are you allowing this?
Yeah.
Is this something I need to learn? Take it back. Take it back to you and God, exclusively to you and him. And he will show you and say, yes, I'm trying to find this in you. And when you take it back to him, I could go right back to my ex-boss now and say, everything you did to me set me up for better. And I thank you. And when we can get to do that in a practical way, and I'm saying this is not fairy tale biblical, guru stuff. I'm talking about when you're in the, like Sister Vicky, you pointed it so well, you're in the midst of that struggle, in the midst of that hurt, in the midst of that pain, you have to take it back to God and say, you allowed this, you could stop this. What are you teaching me? And you start there and look for ways, acts of gratitude, attitudes of gratitude. Be thankful. Lord, I'm thanking you for this boss right now. I don't know why he's doing this, but I see your hand in my life and you're directing me out of this. And that could be a testimony, not just for you, but for him and for everybody watching. And you'll be surprised. People have come to me years later and said, boy, Lisa, I remember that time when you were with this person and I saw, how did you do that? I don't know, that Jesus. And it's not like you're coming up and beating people side the head and saying, serve the Lord and don't eat this and dress this way. Live your practical life and people will see that. And that's what Joseph did. And that's what I'm so thankful for his story. And I'm thankful for you guys for this discussion.
I see our time.
Sister Vicky, we are flat out of time. You want to wrap up in 1 minute, please?
Well, my thing is with the practicalness of forgiveness, it's an ongoing process, especially for me personally. Issues will come our way. Lisa, I hear you about the difficult boss. I'm still dealing with one of them right now. And I'm like, every day I'm talking and battling with God. So it's the relationship you have with God that's going to help you to overcome. That's all I can say. Develop a personal relationship with God. Know me and talk to him like you talk to a friend who's sitting right across from you. God, you get me in this mess and you promise to never leave me nor forsake me. So you got to get me out of this. Show me what I'm supposed to learn and help me to move on. And God, if it ain't too much trouble, please do it for me. Keep that relationship going with God, and I'm sure he will work all things out.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Vicky, I think you also covered Thursday, and because we are basically 2 minutes over time, I'm just going to summarize by reading a profound statement that was found on Friday's lesson, and it says, nothing can justify an unforgiving spirit. He who is unmerciful toward others shows that he himself is not a partaker of God's pardoning grace. So I implore and encourage all of you. I know that forgiveness is difficult, but if Christ is reigning in our hearts, like Beverly and Clayton would have said, we can forgive and reconciliation will come over time. And then I also want to leave Colossians 3:13, which is another text that we should bear in mind at all times. Bear with each other. I know sometimes we can be difficult, but Colossians 3:13 say we must bear with each other, forgive one another. And Vicky spoke about that forgiveness 70 times 7. And if any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. So thank you very much for your participation. And we will end now as we prepare for the second half of the service. Thank you and have a happy Sabbath.
Happy Sabbath.